Every year, over 276 million people report experiencing severe anxiety more than the combined populations of France, Italy, and Canada. Yet in ancient Tibet, monks sit motionless for days, eyes wide open, smiling while exposed to freezing wind on mountain cliffs. Why? In Thailand, a golden statue of a serene man, cross-legged beneath a tree, attracts millions. In Japan, an entire sect believes the answer to life's pain lies not in the heavens, but beneath the shade of a fig tree. And in India, where the story begins, a prince once looked at a sick man, an old man, and a corpse, and saw the entire illusion of reality collapse. And again to one man's journey, 2,500 years ago, as if it holds the missing blueprint of consciousness itself? Could the ultimate truth be hidden in that moment? Why do the world's most advanced mind scientists, psychologists, spiritual seekers return again to sit under a tree and discover something so profound it redefined what it means to be human? This is not a myth. This is not religion. This is the story of Siddhartha Gautama, the man who walked away from unimaginable wealth, power, and comfort. From the silent monasteries of Burma to the neon-lit streets of San Francisco, his name echoes, the Buddha. But before the Enlightenment, before the sermons, before the statues, he was just a man with questions. He returned from the silence, not as a prophet, but as a mirror. Because we are about to cross the threshold of a forgotten doorway where kings become beggars, where silence speaks, and where enlightenment is not divine, but human. A mirror to the mind. A reminder that you are not your thoughts. You are not your pain. You are the watcher behind the flame. Questions we all carry, but rarely dare to voice. Why do we suffer? Can suffering ever truly end? In Egypt, mystics spoke of the Ba and Ka fragments of soul trapped in cyclical yearning. Native American lore tells of spirit walks, leaving the tribe to face death and return with vision. In Greek philosophy, Heraclitus whispered of the impermanence of all things. All point to one truth. The journey inward is the journey beyond. And if so, what must we let go of to be free? This is a map etched in time, buried under rituals and statues, waiting to be reread. Across cultures, echoes of his path appear. But what makes this man's story different is that he came back. This is not just history. And if he, a mortal, could end suffering, what does that mean for us? So, open your eyes. Still your breath. If this awakening resonates with you, like, subscribe, and share. The journey begins now. Chapter 1. Ancient Knowledge, the Wheel of History. Through time. What if the oldest truths were never meant to be worshipped, but remembered? I will never forget the first time I read that in ancient India, the very land where Siddhartha Gautama was born, time was not seen as a straight line, but as a wheel. A never-ending cycle. A turning of birth, death, and rebirth called samsara. To them, history was not a march forward. It was a spiral inward. Yet he was the first to say, liberation is possible, now, not after death, not in another life, but here. That changes everything. He was a revolutionary in the deepest metaphysical sense. While others looked up to the gods, he looked inward to the mind. And it made me wonder, have we been looking at progress all wrong? Here is a fact that blew my mind. The concept of reincarnation existed in the Upanishads, the sacred Hindu texts centuries before the Buddha walked the earth. He was not just a reformer. But why did this happen in India, and not, say, in Rome or Babylon? I think it is because India, more than any other cradle of civilization, was obsessed with consciousness. The Tao, like the Dharma, flowed not from dogma, but from listening to nature. Emptiness, stillness, balance. These were not passive ideas. The end of a calendar was not a doomsday, but a portal, a transition to deeper awareness. They were active awakenings. Emperors were chosen by heaven. Prophets spoke for the Almighty. But Buddha simply said, "I am awake." And the one who harmonized them most clearly was a silent man sitting under a Bodhi tree. Because in it is a subtle accusation. If he can awaken, what is my excuse? When you start following the thread of this story, it weaves through other ancient cultures, quietly, mysteriously, persistently. He left us with a path, a way, and to me, that makes his teaching more dangerous and more beautiful than any religion. While Mesopotamia built ziggurats and Egypt perfected the afterlife, ancient India turned inward, seeking the nature of the soul through silence, meditation, and detachment. That civilization gave us yoga, Ayurveda, meditation, nonviolence, and the radical idea that suffering is optional. What if real power is not in how many you rule, but how deeply you know yourself? And this ancient whisper comes back. Peace is not a place you go, it is a way you see. But this story invites me to sit, breathe, and see. Not to believe, but to inquire. Even their gods were paradoxes. Shiva destroys to create. Vishnu sleeps to maintain the cosmos. Reality itself was seen as Maya, divine illusion. As if your soul knows something your mind forgot. Buddha emerged from this world not in opposition to it, but as its consequence. Awareness, presence. He even traveled to Egypt and Babylon, perhaps even India, seeking the same gnosis, the hidden knowledge of self-liberation. Into the forests, the caves, the inner battlegrounds where a prince chose silence over command and found truth beyond ritual. His famous theorem? Just geometry on the surface. His real passion was inner harmony. And it is not just India, because what comes next could change the way you see everything. In Greece, around the same era, Pythagoras taught that the soul is immortal and undergoes cycles of purification. His father tried to shield him from pain, death, old age, but he looked anyway. And that single act of courage, of turning towards suffering instead of away, became the beginning of a path walked by millions. In China, Lao Tzu wrote, "To know others is intelligence. To know yourself is true wisdom." In the Mayan world, long before European contact, the concept of cyclical time reigned supreme. It is as if all these civilizations were tuning into the same frequency through different instruments. What struck me most personally is that Siddhartha did not claim to be a god. That was rare in ancient times. Pharaohs were divine. That humility, it haunts me. And yet, he did not leave us with commandments carved in stone. Let us pause here for a second. Imagine a civilization so ancient that their primary concern was not conquest or gold or even survival, but awakening. That changes the whole playing field of human history. It forces us to rethink what we value. As someone raised in the West, I was taught to climb, compete, conquer. Because that is what Siddhartha did. He questioned everything. So here we are, thousands of years later. A planet more connected, yet more anxious, more distracted, more divided than ever. Maybe that is why I cannot stop telling this story. Because it reminds me that wisdom is not lost. It is just buried under noise, screens, headlines, fear. And if you are still with me right now, perhaps you too feel that pull. That strange mix of yearning and recognition. The teachings of the Buddha are not exclusive. They are inclusive. They do not require belief. They only require attention. In the next chapter, we will step deeper into that presence. So if this ancient stream of knowledge moves you, even a little click like subscribe and stay with us. Chapter 2. The moment beneath the Bodhi tree, the one who saw the truth. What if the ultimate truth has no form, no name, and no one to claim it? Under a tree that still stands today in Bodh Gaya, India, a man sat unmoving for 7 days and nights. No food, no water, no prayers. Just silence so complete, it was deafening. By the end of that week, he was no longer Siddhartha. He had become something else. But here's the paradox. He did not gain something. He lost everything. His fear, his self, his very identity. So I ask, can enlightenment be the art of vanishing? Why do billions of people revere this moment, but none of us truly live it? Why does the world worship a statue of a man with closed eyes instead of asking what he saw? For me, this moment under the Bodhi tree has always been more than just spiritual symbolism. It feels like a cosmic tear in the fabric of human history, a place where the veil lifted, if only for a breath. Every system, every teacher, every method had brought him to the same wall. And then, in that stillness, it cracked. But from the way the human mind attaches itself to the temporary and believes it eternal, he did not fight. He simply observed. Siddhartha had reached the edge. Years of extreme asceticism had failed. Indulgence had left him empty. He did not chant. And the first thing he saw was suffering, not from war, not from disease. This is the first noble truth, that to live is to suffer. Like tuning a string, as he once heard by the river, not too tight, not too loose. The middle way, not because life is cruel, but because our expectations are illusions. No sugarcoating, not a heaven, not a paradise, but the extinguishing of the flame of craving. That every single one of us has the same mind, the same mirror, the same knot, and the same key. No salvation from the sky. In Greece, Socrates urged, know thyself, because ignorance is the true prison. It was practical, step by step, for laymen. In every myth, the tree is where worlds meet heaven and earth, seen and unseen, mortality and truth, for kings and beggars alike. In Vedic India, the concept of Maya warned that the world is illusion. Yet only the Buddha gave a map out of it. Just clarity. It shook me the first time I read it. Not because it was dark, but because it was honest. He did not say, I am chosen. He said, I am awake, and you can be too. Because what it revealed could not be spoken. It could only be known. The second noble truth followed, that suffering has a cause desire. About how truth, when left unfiltered, makes the powerful tremble. We want, we cling, we grasp, and we suffer when reality refuses to match the image we hold in our mind. It is a symbol of human potential, of the moment we stopped waiting for external salvation and looked within. And here lies the third. If suffering has a cause, it can also have an end, nirvana. If it ends suffering at the root, then why, has it been silenced? But the real key, the fourth noble truth, is the path. 8 steps, not commandments, not dogmas, just practices. And here is what made this moment, this tree, this silence, so radically different from anything before. He did not find a God. He found a pattern. He did not hear a voice. He saw a mirror. He did not ascend to a divine realm. He returned to his breath. And that breath, my friend, is something you and I share. This was no exclusive revelation. It was a reminder. In Egypt, the ancient priests spoke of Psi, the life force, which must be balanced to cross into eternity. This map was not theoretical. And that above all is what astonishes me. Siddhartha did not keep the truth for himself. That tree, to me, is more than bark and branches. The Bodhi tree is our axis mundi. Like the Norse Yggdrasil, like the Egyptian Etched pillar, like the tree of life in Kabbalah. But Siddhartha's tree bore no fruit, only silence. And yet, here's the bitter twist. If this truth liberates, if it transcends caste, class, and culture, why have emperors tried to distort it? Why did priests attempt to absorb it into doctrine? Why have entire canons been lost, hidden, or burned? What is so dangerous about a man who sat under a tree and saw things as they are? As we now prepare to explore the buried scrolls, the forbidden councils, and the secret edits that reshaped Buddhism's essence. I invite you to pause, breathe, and ask, if I was there, under that tree, would I have stayed in the silence? Or would I have run from it? Because the next chapter of this story is not just about censorship, it is about control. So if you are ready, if you still believe that a simple man under a tree can shake the pillars of the world, stay with me. The story is only beginning. Chapter 3. Why truth was hidden. What happens when the truth no longer serves the system? What do you do with a man who teaches freedom without temples, salvation without gods, and enlightenment without intermediaries? You erase him. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the recurring pattern of history. Every time a truth emerges that threatens control, it is either domesticated or destroyed. And the story of Siddhartha Gautama, the awakened one, is no exception. In fact, the greatest threat he posed was not to other religions. It was to hierarchy itself. Think about this. Buddhism spread from India to Sri Lanka, to China, to Japan, to Tibet, and beyond. But in every single region, it underwent significant adjustments. In China, it fused with Taoism. In Japan, it absorbed Shinto. In Tibet, it merged with Bon shamanism. What began as a path of self-liberation slowly became a new system. Now let me be clear. I am not against tradition. I honor it. But I also believe that somewhere along the way, something primal was lost. Something raw, something deeply human. One of the earliest Buddhist schools, now mostly extinct, preserved versions of the Dharma where the Buddha was portrayed as supramundane, omnipresent, not to deify him, but to reflect the boundlessness of awakening. These ideas were later rejected by more orthodox schools for being too mystical. Who decided what was too dangerous and why? Like the Buddha, Jesus originally taught through parables, metaphors, inner truths. But when the church became institutionalized, those mystical interpretations were replaced with rigid dogma. The Gospel of Thomas, rediscovered in Nag Hammadi in 1945, contains over 100 sayings of Jesus that read like Zen koans. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. The kingdom is inside you and outside you. And here is where things get strange. Just months after the Buddha's death, the first Buddhist council was convened. 500 monks gathered to canonize the teachings. Sounds noble. Except it does not validate the ego. It dissolves it, right or wrong. But when I began reading the older, stranger versions of spiritual texts, the ones that whisper instead of shout, I realized something. Many of the Buddha's more mystical, radical insights were left out. Not in monasteries, but in caves, in jars, and in forbidden scrolls. It is about remembrance. Others were edited, summarized, or categorized to fit a more systematic worldview. We can dust off the fragments, listen to the whispers, and ask not, what did the Buddha say? But what did he see? It was dukkha, suffering, and the way out. A raft to cross the river, not a shrine to worship from the shore. He said this himself. But somewhere along the way, the raft became sacred, untouchable, and worse guarded. Some say it was to preserve purity. These teachings were suppressed when Christianity took power, a place where reality cracked open and then slowly closed again. Others say it was to establish power. Either way, the living flame became a doctrine. These rites were eventually outlawed by the Roman Empire. But the most shocking part? Those forgotten fragments began to reappear. Take the Matsegika texts, for example. In the 20th century, archaeologists uncovered ancient sutras in the Gilgit region of Pakistan texts that included female arhats, spontaneous enlightenment, and direct realizations without monastic hierarchy. Why were these excluded? And what about the secret tantras of Vajrayana texts that were only whispered from teacher to student, hidden from the public for centuries, deemed too powerful for the uninitiated? It reminds me of the Gnostics in early Christianity. Sounds familiar? Here is my personal conflict. I was raised in a world of black and white truths. Heaven or hell. Truth is not comfortable. And that is terrifying. A Buddha's true message was never meant to become a religion. It was a tool. That is what makes Bodh Gaya so unique. It is not just a holy site. It is a wound in history. And this is not limited to the East. In ancient Greece, mystery schools like Eleusis offered direct experience of the divine through ritual, inner death, and rebirth. In Egypt, Hermetic texts like the Corpus Hermeticum taught that God is mind and salvation comes through gnosis, knowledge of the self. In every age, there are those who awaken, and those who seal the gates behind them. So, what do we do with this? For me, it is not about blame. We cannot rewrite the past, but we can reopen the path, because what he saw was not doctrine. And maybe the real reason his original vision was buried is because it was too liberating. No one profits from your freedom. No one can sell you your own mind. But perhaps the most astonishing revelation is this. The hidden truths are not confined to dusty scrolls or ancient councils. They are re-emerging now through quantum laboratories, near-death experiences, and the cutting edge of neuroscience. Because as science approaches the limits of matter, it begins to stumble upon something ancient, consciousness. And there, the old path meets us again. Chapter 4. How Modern Science Leads to Awakening. What if the universe didn't begin with matter, but with mind? Can your thoughts be more than internal noise? Could they actually shape reality? And what if ancient sages knew this long before modern labs confirmed it? 1. Meditation rewires the brain. Here is a number that startled me. 8 weeks of mindful meditation, just 8 weeks, produces measurable changes in the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex in adults, according to Harvard and Yale studies. That is not spiritual fluff. It is structural brain transformation. I, too, have felt it. After daily meditation, my mind felt less chaotic, not because thoughts disappeared, but because I stopped identifying with them. 2. Observer effect. Mind shapes matter. In the classic double-slit experiment, particles behave like waves when unobserved, but collapse into particles when measured. It is not metaphor. It is physics. In quantum labs, something as simple as observation changes the result. That echoes an ancient teaching. With our minds, we make the world. Only now, it sounds like experimental data, not mysticism. 3. Consciousness as quantum phenomenon? Some theories, like the Penrose-Hameroff orchestrated objective reduction, propose that consciousness arises from quantum processes in tiny structures called microtubules inside our neurons. During major global events like earthquakes, weddings, or tragedies, these machines register subtle but statistically significant deviations. Does collective human attention send ripples through the unknowable field of consciousness? I do not know, but I find myself moved. It feels like science is tentatively mapping something ancient communities have believed for millennia, that we are connected at a deeper level. These ideas are controversial, but they resonate with ancient wisdom. That consciousness is more than neural electricity. It might be fundamental to reality. That connection gave me chills. It felt like science is circling back to the soul. This is the so-called hard problem of consciousness. The qualia, the taste of chocolate, the ache of loss that cannot be reduced to neurons. I have felt it in my own life. Two people can see the same sunset, but only you know what that sunset means to you. That gap between data and experience is where science stumbles and where mystery begins. 4. Past life memory. Evidence for mind beyond brain. At the University of Virginia, researchers documented over 2,500 cases of young children recalling past lives complete with names, places, and events they could not have known. In India and Sri Lanka, Some shrieked with grief when promised modern toys, insisting they wanted their past family possessions instead. But after facing chronic anxiety and finding no relief in medication, I tried mindfulness out of desperation. I expected calm. Instead, I found storms in my mind. But over time, the storms subsided, not because they disappeared, but because I became less attached to them. That personal shift felt at the synaptic level mirrors what brain scans are showing. My suffering lessened, not because the external world changed, but because my relationship with it did. If even a few of these cases are genuine, consciousness is not confined to a single lifetime. That shattered my assumptions and forced me to ask, could we be more than biological machines? Today, neuroscience watches the mind with fMR, but both point to the same conclusion. True insight arises from observing with clarity, presence, and freedom from identification. 5. Global consciousness. A collective mind? We do not have to choose between tradition and innovation. We can integrate them. The Global Consciousness Project tracks random number generators around the world. 6. The hard problem. Subjective experience. Neuroscience can map brain activity and predict decisions seconds before we act, but it cannot explain why things feel like anything. 7. Wisdom echoes across civilizations. This is not just Western debate. For over 2,000 years, Eastern traditions have taught the same points. The Upanishads call the self the silent witness behind thoughts. In Taoism, the concept of Wu Wei means effortlessness born from alignment with the way. Ancient Greek philosophers like Heraclitus taught that reality is flux ever-changing and impossible to hold on to. So when modern science stumbles upon the same ideas, I feel a sense of awe. It is as if human consciousness is remembering its own map. 8. My journey, from skeptic to explorer. I used to view meditation as esoteric and wishful thinking. 9. Where science and ancient pathways converge. We have walked from neuron rewiring to quantum observers, from past lives to collective consciousness. And it all points us back to a single question. Who is truly watching? What is the awareness behind awareness? Buddha sat under a tree without scanners. He watched the mind. We stand at the crossroads. This is the unique moment in history. We live at the intersection of ancient internal science and modern external science. Imagine a future where meditation is as normalized as exercise, where quantum physics textbooks reference Buddha's teachings, where mental health professionals appreciate the spiritual dimension of suffering. It might sound radical, but perhaps it is simply the next step in natural unfolding of human understanding. Chapter 5. Awakening is a choice. The door has always been here. What if the only thing standing between you and freedom is your own mind? Could one moment of inner clarity change the trajectory of your life? And what if this very moment echoes revelations discovered under ancient trees, measured in brain scans, and whispered across cultures for thousands of years? Are you ready to see behind the curtain? That is not fantasy. It is happening now, in meditation labs at Harvard, in the dusty ruins of Bodh Gaya, and in the deep recesses of your own attention. Imagine this. A single awareness can recalibrate your brain, alter reality at a quantum level, and reconnect you to a collective human pulse. A moment of presence is accessible to anyone, anywhere. The uniqueness of your journey, what makes this path different from anything else, is its democratizing power. No temples, no ritual, no gatekeepers. In every civilization, from the silent Buddhists under the Bodhi Tree, to Taoist sages in China, to Orphic seers of ancient Greece, the call was the same: look inward. Modern science now confirms that inner gaze is not mystical. It is measurable, repeatable, and transformative. Logical steps to personal transformation. We have mapped the journey. 1. Brain rewiring through meditation. Your mind literally changes. 2. Quantum observer affects you participate in reality's very construction. 3. Qualia and the hard problem subjective experience matters. 4. Evidence of consciousness persisting perhaps beyond this life. In Taoist tradition, Wu Wei spoke of effortless being. Ancient Greek philosophers urged seeing the unity behind chaos. Even indigenous cultures describe this still point, that spark of awareness untouched by suffering. And I found a tremor beneath every thought, a hidden confidence that did not require approval. And that truth does not come from achievement. It comes from presence. These are not separate truths. They integrate into a singular invitation. You are more than you think. A resonance across time and culture. This is no isolated phenomenon. In India, the Upanishads called the self the silent witness. All point to one conclusion. The path to freedom is not external. It is inside you. Take a breath. Feel the silence behind the noise. A personal admission, I must confess. I resisted this path for a long time. I chased certifications, medications, solutions outside myself. Then I sat down. I meditated. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be this. You are already enough. The invitation. So, here is my ask of you. It is going to challenge our assumptions about self, space, and connection. You will not want to miss it. I want to hear what surfaces when you pay attention. Pause. Notice. Observe one thought without judgment. Reflect. Ask yourself, who is noticing? No ritual needed. No belief required. Just curiosity and courage. Hit subscribe. Click the notification bell and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. The path of awakening is not hidden. It is a choice, made one breath at a time. Let us talk about it. What if you placed your attention on the observer inside? Would your life feel different? Would you find freedom not in a destination but in every breath? Share your thoughts below. What comes next? The next video dives deeper into how modern science is developing tools to help us sustain this clarity brain-computer interfaces, digital retreats, and new models of consciousness. Final call. If this journey stirred something in you, if you feel a resonance, a flicker, join our community. Because true freedom is already here, right now.